A lot of people think that leadership centres on strategy, decisiveness, and authority. But the truth is that the most powerful leaders build belonging and buy-in through a genuine human connection and by trusting their intuition. In this episode, Vanita Uppal OBE joins me to explore leadership rooted in connection and compassion and belief, as well as what becomes possible when leaders slow down enough to really truly see, feel, and understand the people that they lead. Welcome to the Independent School Podcast with me, Juliet Corbett. I'm a trusted advisor, executive coach, and strategist, working with accomplished leaders who are navigating complex challenges, the kind that can feel like a tangled ball of string, confusing, frustrating, and hard to unpick. In this new series, I bring you real-world conversations with principals, heads, and CEOs of independent and international schools. Together, we explore problem-solving in uncertainty, staying strategic amidst the daily bustle of leadership, and building high-performing teams. Today, I'm joined by Vanita Uppal OBE, Director of the British School New Delhi and an international educator with more than 30 years of leadership experience. Vanita is the only serving Indian principal to have received an OBE in recognition of her service to British education in an international context. Under her leadership, the British School New Delhi has received global recognition, including being named top British school in the world in 2018. Alongside her role at the school, Vanita serves on a number of influential international boards and councils, including the IB School Leadership Advisory Council and the IE University Advisory Board for High Schools. She chairs the executive board of FEBISIA, the Federation of British International Schools in Asia, and she's also served on the TES Global Advisory Board and has chaired the international division of HMC. In this conversation, we move beyond the titles and the structures to explore the inner life of leadership, how human connection shapes culture, how intuition informs judgment, and why belonging, belief, and compassion matter as much as strategy and systems. What comes through really strongly is Vanita's infectious passion for education, her commitment to people, and her belief in the importance of leading in a way that makes schools feel like places people truly belong, not just institutions they work or learn in. So let's get into my conversation with Vanita Uppal OBE. Hello, Vanita, and welcome to the Independent School Podcast. Fantastic to have you with us today. They're in New Delhi. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Juliet. It's an absolute pleasure to be on the podcast here in New Delhi, in Chanakyapuri in New Delhi. Lovely to be here.
Fantastic.
Talking to you.
Yes. So what I'd love to start with is getting a sense of your purpose, your mission. What was it that drew you to a career in education? What's the root of that passion for education for you?
I think it's a very interesting journey. I never set out to be a teacher. I wasn't going to be a teacher. I was going to be a doctor. Then from a doctor, I moved to a civil servant. And between my master's and my preparation for my civil service exam, I was invited to go and teach in a school. The school was owned by my friend's mother, and she said, "Why are you wasting your time? Just come and do some work." And I said, teaching is not my vocation. It's not going to come naturally to me. And she said, "Okay, do it for 3 months. How does it matter?" And 40 years later, here I am. And I think those 3 months just got me hooked to the classroom. And I then continued to teach there for a few years. But I wasn't a trained teacher at that time. So I think I taught intuitively. My sense of what works in a classroom was all intuition and what came naturally to me. And I had amazing relationships with my students. I was the most sought after teacher. And then I quit my regular job and went back to university to train as a teacher because I knew there was nothing else that I wanted to do. I didn't even sit the civil service exam. And I just decided that this was it for me, that the classroom was where I felt most passionate, most joyous, most inspired. And as I said, 40 years later, here I am, and with not a single regret, but just gratitude that I took that choice. Very often I say that it's a bad word to use in education, addiction, but I think that that would kind of apply to my early journey. I was addicted to the classroom. You couldn't get me out of it. You could give me as many lessons. I wasn't looking at workload. I wasn't looking at the age groups I was teaching, whatever subjects you asked me. I mean, obviously in my discipline, and I would do it. I would be in school till 7 o'clock at night, organizing enrichment programs and just loving it, just loving the energy that being with young people kind of inspired me with. Yeah. So therefore, stuck to it.
So there's something about the addiction, but it's the addiction to the service that you're having, the impact you're having, the mission, the purpose that you were able to embody in that classroom.
Right. And Juliet, early on in your career, even when you read the textbooks and you've seen best practice and you've seen not very good practice, and you learn from both, right? One of the things that was my mantra was remember the why. Remember why you're doing what you're doing. And it's not that every day was a good day. There were rough days and you would come back in despair and you would, but just kind of pick yourself up as why are you doing what you're doing? And I think that has stayed with me through my entire career. So therefore, even as a teacher, I make sure that the student knows why I am teaching what I'm teaching. Because students are highly intelligent. Young people are highly intelligent, intuitive, creative. So don't just think you can go and impose something on them without teaching them the relevance and the why of what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that is what leads to stickability in learning.
Yeah.
And I think because I'm still a practitioner, whenever I can, I jump into the classroom to go and teach. And I think that's what's driven me. And when I saw that education, that being a teacher is a service, it's not a job, it's not a trade, it's a vocation, it's a passion.
Yeah.
And you're serving. I was reading Sir John Jones' work when he said that teachers are dream keepers and magic weavers. I think that's what you do. You just plant a seed. 20 years later, an alumnus comes back to you and says, you said that to me then. I, of course, have no recollection that I've said that. But that has turned the way that student, that young person has developed life, has made career choices. Or it says, and some of them said, it keeps coming back to me. It keeps coming back to me. What you said to me in that history lesson. For the life of me, I can't remember what I've said.
But it's the impact you have when you don't even realize. You can't, as you're listening to this, you can't see the enormous grin which is covering my face, listening to you share that, because this is what we need more of. We need more people who understand that their infectious addiction to the impact, to the excitement of helping others to learn and helping others to have that moment of insight, which might be curriculum knowledge based, but probably the deepest moments of insight are going to be learning something about themselves,
about
resilience.
That I can. And one of the very interesting things that came to my career very early was the word belief. Very often when you're given a leadership role early on in your career or whatever, at whatever age, women in particular suffer from an imposter syndrome. That, can I do it? Are you sure? I mean, am I ready for it? Right? But one thing that stuck with me was belief. Belief in what I was doing, belief in my students, belief in my colleagues. And I kid you not, that to me, I think, is the central, most significant difference we can make to a student's life. When they don't believe in themselves, in their moment of doubt, when you show faith, when you show belief, when they can't see it, very often, whether it's colleagues or students, they can't see their potential. They don't, and you've seen it, and you can identify it. And I mean, that has been one of the greatest joys of my professional journey, is to see people who I've mentored grow with that belief.
It is about belief. What's really interesting there is when you mention imposter syndrome, I think one of the things that I've learned through my career, having had this, at stages as well myself, is that a lot of it's about courage, the idea that courage comes before confidence.
Right.
And actually what you've unpicked there is belief is an absolute important component of courage. Like if I'm going to have the courage to go and talk to someone I don't know, it's based on a belief that that person is going to be at least kind and polite, and then there's a further belief which builds on that is they might find me interesting. I could be helpful to them. So it's all based on this belief. But it's the courage in the moment to do the thing anyway. The confidence can follow.
Absolutely. And just while we are speaking of courage, I think it's courage to do what is right, even though it's difficult. Very often, the right thing and the courageous thing to do is difficult.
Yeah.
But to be able to stand by the courage of your convictions. And I think that is something every leader, I think we've done a lot of research on value-driven leadership, etc. But if you ask me, when you're in crisis, what is your default mode? It is driven by your values.
Yeah.
When you're in crisis and the buck stops with you. You've done the consultations. You have to make a difficult decision. What do you rely on? You rely on your innate, deep-rooted values.
Yes.
And as I was growing up, that's what my father taught me, that it's not just important to have a good head. It has to be accompanied with a good heart.
Yeah.
And if you don't have both, he told me, then you're happy being a homemaker. If you want to go out into the world of work and be a good human being, that's what you need.
Yeah. Yeah. And I suspect that we're going to need more courage, more understanding of our values, more of the ability to inspire others to believe in themselves.
True.
These things are going to become more and more important, especially in a world that is becoming more uncertain and more complex. So that's one of the ways that we prepare our young people.
Correct.
Of course, this applies to our teaching staff, to our non-academic staff, to everyone who's part of that school community, and to some extent leading the parents as well, leading the parents through a journey of confidence and their own self-understanding of what it is to be a parent. But a school leader holds quite a lot of emotion for others, holds quite a lot of complexity. And I've got a feeling that having the courage to do the right thing, but also having the courage to say sometimes, maybe we don't have all the answers, and that's okay.
And I think two things come in here, Juliet, rather three things come in here with what you've said. One is building resilience to deal with ambiguity, which means for that it is critical that you understand that failure and success are on the same spectrum. A failure is a tried attempt.
Yeah.
Right? And I know it sounds jargonistic, but it really isn't. But if you walk the talk, if you set up an ecosystem, be it for adults and be it for children, that's non-judgmental, right? Yeah. Then you can hope to build resilience. Otherwise, you can't. Yeah. You can't. You just cannot. I think the second piece that you talked about, that we don't have all the answers, I think for leadership to be effective, it needs to be vulnerable and authentic. Because I just can't stand there and say, I know it all. I'm not a one-woman army. If I didn't have the amazing team I have around me, would I have been able to achieve half of what I've done for the school? Absolutely no. Absolutely, answer is a bold no, right? Because you can draw up a great vision. You can read enough books, draw up a great vision. But who's going to implement it?
Yeah.
How are you going to carry the team? And if that team is going to shy away from taking risks, is going to shy away from trying because they might think they're going to fail, then you have to learn how to fail fast. You have to learn how to fail fast.
Learn to fail fast and learn. Yes.
Yeah. And one of the things I say to all colleagues who join the school, and I say, there is no hierarchy in ideation. A good idea is a good idea no matter where it comes from. So if it's a good idea that's going to benefit the students, bring it on. Tell me how it's going to work. Try it out. But the yardstick is, it has to be in the interests of students. Yes. It has to do the best by the students in our care.
Yeah.
If it isn't, then it's your vanity project. It can wait. But it has to have a positive impact on the students we serve. And I think that has served me very well in my journey because I've got like-minded people who have the same value-driven approach to teaching and learning. I'm very, very blessed and fortunate. Very blessed and fortunate.
And it comes back to that sense that we have core values inside ourselves that could be part of the judgment that we use in making our decisions.
Yeah.
There's also the shared values that we have as a culture. And within that school culture, there'll also be the emergence, either as top down or bottom up, depending on the way you do it, of a strategy, which is how are we actually going to solve the biggest problems that we face?
Yes.
And so what you're describing is a brilliant lens. So the lens is, does this idea positively impact the children? Great. You've probably got more ideas than you've got time for just with that lens. So then there's the strategy and values lens. There's the sense of this year we're focusing on whatever it might be. And so does this idea also advance that focus?
Yeah, we've done a lot of work on organizational culture because, in fact, I led a session at Corbett last year about that culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Yes.
And we've heard that. And that is true.
Yeah.
That is so true. That if you don't have that mindset, that is a shared mindset of the community, you cannot drive anything forward.
Yeah.
And otherwise, what will happen? The loudest voice will become the most dominant voice, right?
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
your quiet achievers are going to get more and more relegated into the background, and they're not going to have a voice. And that is something that is absolutely, I think, inimical to the growth of a positive institution.
Yeah.
So I think these things run in parallel. You can't separate one from the other.
Yeah.
And, when I joined the school, there were about 250 students. Today, we are 1,300 strong with a staff of teaching staff and admin staff of about 300. And I think one of the things we've tried to hold on to and build deliberately and intentionally is the culture of the school.
Yeah.
The sense of belonging.
Yeah.
I mean, whether it's a student who's leaving or a parent who's leaving or a teacher who's leaving the school, the word they often use to describe their time at TBS, it was a second home. It was a second home.
Speaks really strongly of belonging. Yeah.
Yeah. And that I think when you have that shared sense of belonging and commitment, you really can't go wrong. Yeah, right. You might, one of your initiatives might not work, but that doesn't matter because that's part of the trial and error and the experimentation.
Yeah.
And but with the knowledge that it will work itself out. You've got a supportive body of colleagues. It's collaborative, and it'll happen.
Absolutely. I mean, that Peter Drucker quote, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast," is so important. And it is basically culture eats everything for breakfast. Basically, it's strategy, but it's everything in an organizational sense. And what I find fascinating is thinking about, if we think about strategy, some of strategy is going to be really hard, concrete things that are tangible that you can point at. That's great. There is a place for that. But any strategic development process or any strategic plan also needs to think about how do we want to nudge our culture in the direction that we want it to head in?
Right.
We can't do that directly, in my belief. You can't directly change the culture just by saying we're going to change.
No.
So then you find, where are there tangible projects, short-term projects that might run for a term, might run for a year, which are going to nudge the culture in the direction you want it to head in. And that might be more collaboration between staff departments, for example. Okay, so which of our tangible projects that we're already considering can we make sure we create them and design them in a way which does nudge that culture? So to some extent, the culture is set by who the leaders are. And that's to do with identity and what you embody every day you walk into work. So your passion is leading the culture in the direction that passion becomes infectious, that others feel it too.
Others feel it.
That's just you being you. And you can shift and change that as you wish to. But there's also a way of nudging the culture through this kind of tangible strategic projects. And I think it's when we think about a strategy development project in that view, yes, culture does eat strategy for breakfast, but that doesn't mean we give up. That means that we recognize the symbiotic nature of strategy and culture.
Right. So say, for example, when we look at our strategic planning, And I know there has been a lot of work on saying strategic plans are passé now. You shouldn't be looking at strategic plans at all. And that's been the latest research. But I think everybody needs a guiding, you need a North Star. If you go by understanding by backward design, the UBD approach, you need to know where you're going and then develop that journey, then develop the milestones. And so we develop our strategic plan or our strategic priorities rather differently from other schools. And for example, we have both a bottoms up and a top down approach. So in our whole school insets, we will be talking about what is it, and conversations in the corridors, conversation with leaders through the year. You'll pick up a sense of what is it that we need to work more deliberately with greater intentionality on. What is it that seems to be slipping through the cracks? What is it that's the new emerging lead? AI, for example. What is it that is getting people coming to school with a spring in their step, right? You want to hold on to that, right? You don't want to lose that. You don't want to lose that with copious documentation and evidence building, because you still want that energy in the classroom, right? And so one of the things we did do, and we continue to do that, is that what we do is we have these conversations. The academic leadership team then sits together and says, okay, let's just filter it out. What are the key themes that are emerging? The themes emerge. It comes to the senior leadership team and we say, okay, let's fine tune this a little more. And then we take it back to the community. And we said, this is what we are thinking for the next 3 years. Does this resonate? What would it mean to you and your teams? And we'll do a few hour sessions on that. We then get that. Then we know we have buy-in from the teams. We then take it to the strategy committee of the board, because strategy has to be driven by the board. And then what I've seen in my experience, all that happens at that stage is just fine tuning, because this is almost a process in which the entire community has been involved. And then when you start doing action plans and milestones and mapping it out and traffic lighting it, it's not a tedium, because it's already something you have bought into.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I think that really works beautifully for us. So it brings in strategy, brings in leadership, brings in the culture which says that we all own it. This is not somebody else's job, it's mine as well. And I think in my head, I think those are the wins.
So what you've just described there is a masterclass in strategy development within a school. So absolutely music to my ears. Interestingly, I published a research report back in 2019. Okay. It's still on my website. People still download it. It doesn't quite articulate my current thinking, but in that, what I talked about was the spectrum of planned strategy, meaning very much top down, and emergent strategy, meaning very much bottom up. And where is the optimal place on that spectrum for a school, an independent school, to sit? And what you've just described is really common in the patterns that I see in really good strategy development processes, which is that you alternate between, so that the planned element is you plan the structure in which you're going to ask for engagement. So it is quite a structured process that you've just described.
Has to be.
And it has to be, exactly. But within that plan, that creates an opportunity for strategies to emerge and ideas to emerge from various different parts of the community, and people feel buy-in. And as leaders, we don't have all the answers. Like, the best ideas are going to come from all over the place.
And the other thing, one of the things we've talked a lot about recently is that what we need is consistency in standards, not in methodology. Because you still want that creative autonomy with the classroom practitioner. She knows, or he knows, what's going to work best in their class. Who am I to go and tell a grade 4 teacher that I think you should teach, rivers like this? Oh, I'm the least equipped. I'm the least equipped to do that. So I think preserving that, and I think that adds strength to the culture, where you say you are empowered, you are enabled. You have the authority. That authority is given to you. I'm not signing it off to you when you join it's automatic. It's part of the DNA. And I think that's key.
It is absolutely key. And that's what we see. You mentioned the best practice suggests we don't do strategic plans anymore. Yeah, you're right. And actually, I think that's probably the direction we need to head in. Pleased to hear you're talking about a 3-year time frame. I work with some schools that still think about 5. I think that's too long.
No, we have 3 years, and these are all iterative documents.
That's
They're all
the key.
work in progress.
That's
They're
the
all work
key.
in progress.
Yeah.
So I might change focus. So I've said, okay, this is what I want to do with emerging tech. Now, what tech I have today is going to be very different from tech I have 3 years from now.
Exactly.
So if that strategic plan is stagnant and static, then there is no growth happening. It has to be responsive.
Yeah.
It has to be responsive.
And what you've just said there about setting, the standards or the outcomes are described, in a fair amount of detail. There's agility in that as well, but there's a fairly good description of what we want to be the result. How you get there, each staff member has a certain amount of flexibility to determine that.
And even within department teams.
Yeah.
I mean, you might have a Google Doc or a managed back document to map the curriculum, but I'm not going to tell this teacher how to teach Macbeth or another teacher how to teach the Cold War. I'm not going to.
Yeah.
And neither will their curriculum leader.
Yeah.
Neither will their curriculum leader, because everybody teaches and responds to a classroom dynamic differently.
Yes. Yes,
So
absolutely.
it's not regimentation. It's not uniform.
What flashed into my mind there is how far up the governance process we can take this. So what's interesting is when we then start to think about, okay, so the role of the board, governors, trustees, whatever we call them, it's their role to set strategic outcomes, to set the boundaries or the rules of the game, basically. What is the outcome? What are the values that we want? And then what can cause difficulties is when the board starts to say, actually, in our marketing, I think we should be doing our Instagram feed like this. It's like, hang on a minute, that's way too tactical. So actually this same idea of how leaders would lead teachers is echoed all the way up into the way that the board interacts with the executive team as well.
Yeah, and I think, we are blessed. We have a very strategic board, and we have a very different structure from many schools in the UK, because we have largely a parent-elected board, and I sit as a full member, which is again not common. We have a staff governor, and we have 2 representatives of the High Commission, British High Commission, who sit on our board. But the board is very clear that its role is largely futuristic.
Yeah.
That its role is fundamentally to be the custodian of the vision and mission of the school, to ensure they have a fiduciary responsibility, of course. And other than that, any kind of operational micromanagement is what the board stays away from.
Yeah.
So the board, unless I've really done something absolutely stupid or allowed my team to publish something absolutely stupid that's caused or has the risk of causing reputational harm, the board doesn't micromanage. So in our structure, I'm the only employee they have, right? I'm the only one who reports to the board, and the rest I appoint and dismiss as the case may be. So what that does is, when the board is thinking that its role is futuristic, they're not just preserving the school for today and preserving its present position. Their role is to secure the future of the school and future generations of students.
Yeah.
So when the board has that foresight, then you're very fortunate, because as teachers need autonomy to function, so does effective leadership.
Yeah. Yeah.
So does effective leadership. You can't be an effective leader with your hands tied behind your back.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can't do that.
It's interesting, just as you mentioned, there are mostly parent-appointed board. My various different recollections of issues that have emerged in various schools that I've worked with, what you've created there, what has been created within the board structure, that futuristic focus, is absolutely essential as the culture that's needed in any board. And it is especially important within a board which has a high proportion of either current or parents, past parents, or alumni, because there is always a risk that there's a stronger emotional attachment, which can be a strength. And each of the board members needs to be aware of, where am I using emotion? Where is that helpful? Where do I actually need to be much more future focused or much more strategic level and not operational?
So our board undergoes, because we are a CIS accredited school, and so the board undergoes governance training on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And of course, there are pitfalls at times. Governors who are new and haven't been trained and haven't understood the ethos of governance. Every school has a different governance methodology and culture and dynamic. But I think very soon they understand, and they are the ones, when parents come and say to them, oh, I'm moaning about this teacher and that teacher, they'll just direct them to the relevant person. They say, I'm not a grievance body. Yeah. This is not my domain. What I can do is I can give the head, I'll give the director a heads up, and I'll guide you in that direction. And I think that relationship of mutual trust and respect, if you ask me, has allowed the school to succeed the way it has. Because, international research, what it shows, you read enough of it yourself, that most heads don't survive more than 2 chairs. They move on because there is a breakdown in that relationship. So if I say successful schools have deep-rooted positive relationships amongst all stakeholders, that is the absolute truth. Because the breakdown of any relationship is going to make the school go south, for want of a better word. If there is a breakdown at the top, within the leadership, between the leadership and the staff and students, staff and parents, leadership and parents, unless that relationship is mutually respectful and positive, it's not that you have to agree to everything. I mean, there's no groupthink here. Of course, there is a difference of opinion. There is a voice of dissent. But if you do it with respect, then I think you've got the right balance there.
It's really interesting because I can't think of any other sector in which turnover every 2 years of a CEO unless it's within, a very, very agile, small startup, potentially, the tech center, maybe, but of a similar type of organization as a school. There are no other sectors that really have that. It's really indicative. And I think you're right. It's that relationship between the board, or more importantly, probably the chair of the board, and then the principal, director, head, whoever is basically in the CEO role, whatever title they have. That relationship, when that doesn't form in a way that creates respect and trust, that's where things start to unravel really quickly.
I think that relationship between the board and the head has to be a synergistic one. That has to be, we are walking the same path. That has to be an agreed path. Because if there is dissonance there, then that will filter down. Like you said, when you have infectious passion for what you're doing, in the same way, an infectious disagreement will also cascade. Will also cascade equally in equal measure. That will also cascade.
Some of it's collective responsibility, isn't it? We often talk about collective responsibility at the senior leadership team level, in the sense that within a senior leadership team discussion, any view is welcome. We're going to, disagree agreeably. We're going to make sure that there's no groupthink. We're going to come to a conclusion. The decision will then be made. It may be consensus, maybe that the head has, stepped in to make that decision. Whatever happens when you leave that conversation, that meeting, there is a collective
responsibility to own that decision.
And
not to go out and raise your eyebrows and they've done it.
Exactly.
I hear that at times. They've done it. They've decided to do that.
And you're basically removing your own responsibility as being able to have your voice and your agency in that conversation. In that closed door meeting. That's where you absolutely should have the psychological safety to say whatever in a respectful tone, but whatever needs to be said can be said. And I think the same is true within those 4 walls. And of course, the same is true within the board as well. And so anywhere where you've got mutterings or little gossip or little kind of discontent pockets that are allowed to fester is really unhealthy in the culture, and it cascades out really fast.
It does. And, when people have meetings, outside meetings, and
the pre-meeting, the lineup meeting.
That also undercuts the dynamic of the team. It does, because it's very obvious that you've pre-decided what you wanted this meeting to achieve. And like I said, I've been at this school for 35 years, so I've seen it all. I've seen it all unravel, and it's so distinguishable as to what happens when there is synergy and what happens when there is
disrespectful
dissonance. I've seen it all. So
So we're about to wrap up our conversation. What immediately occurs to me is this takes us back to the beginning of our conversation of you standing in that classroom for that first 3-month placement and just teaching through the intuition. You were able to read the room, to feel what was needed. There was a sense that I'm sure that got better with the professional training you went on to do,
Yes,
but
of
that is a
course.
core part of you. So
Yes.
now your ability to read when there's synergy and to just a sense when there is dissonance, when there's a disconnect and an incoherence of what's happening, you're using the same skills now, I think.
Yep. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And in fact, people get very surprised when I'll just say, you know, I don't think there is, I think there's something off there, something's wrong.
Yeah.
And my other colleagues will say, no, it was all fine. So I said, no. And then and I'll obviously dig deeper, I won't let it alone.
Yeah.
And sure enough, and I can't come and say to my colleagues, I said, I don't want to say I told you so, but I was right about that.
Yeah.
And I think that intuition, I think, also gets sharpened when you love what you do.
Yeah.
I think if you, I don't know why people don't use the word love when it comes to teaching, when it comes to being with children. If you love what you do, I mean, even now I do 13, 14-hour days. It's the norm for me. It's the norm for me. And I'm beginning to realize, Juliet, the power of the significance of a pause.
Yeah.
Like slow down to go faster.
Yeah.
You know, the pause, the reflection. And all that is teaching me is that what I'm doing, I just need to do with more people. I just need more and more people to come onto this bandwagon and say that's the way. And I often say to teachers, you have no understanding of the power you have in your hands to transform lives.
Yeah.
You do. You connect with the student, you can change that student's life for the better each time and every time.
Yeah. There's something so powerful that it's only in the last 5 years of my career that I've really seen the power of slowing down, the power of listening to your intuition. And even if your intuition isn't going to tell you what's wrong, it will tell you when something's not quite
Something's
there
not
yet.
right.
Something's slightly off. And I love that you and I have, without probably noticing, we've slowed our pace of our voice. And there's something physically about getting quieter and slower that allows that to happen.
And you know, when there is a connection, and I think it all boils down to human connection.
Yeah.
When you are connected with an individual, you will know when something's not right. You will know that something's going really well. They don't have to come and tell you. You will know it.
Yeah.
And I think if there was something that all my leadership training taught me, at that time, this was just a word. But I think compassionate leadership and the center stage it now occupies is the only way to be.
Yeah.
You can call it socially responsible leadership. You can call it compassionate leadership. But I often say, if you can't be anything else, just be kind.
Yeah.
Be kind. When you're kind, you're right. You know, because you have people come into work with such emotional baggages that they're carrying. And if you can't do anything else, just be kind.
Yeah.
And allow things, and things will work out. They always do.
Yeah.
They always do.
Which, of course, is what the root of belonging is. When we're connecting as humans in a group, in a culture, in a community where people take the time to slow down and listen. Because sometimes all you need to do is just listen to someone, and everything settles. That compassionate leadership, the belonging, that sense of belief, that courage to do the right thing based on your values. There's a strong thread that runs through our conversation today, Vanita. As we wrap up our conversation, if there was one thing you wanted listeners to really go away with from the messages that we've been talking about today, what do you think is something that's really important for people to hold on to?
Oh God, there's so much. I think be true to yourself, be authentic. Because when you're true to yourself, then you're true to others as well. And if you don't respect your own identity, your own roots, if you don't understand your own frailties and your own strengths, and you are unable to reflect, then you are in no position to lead an organization. And unless you have that innate ability and you model that, by acknowledging where you haven't been the best, by saying, I could have done that better, then you are setting up a culture that's shallow and farcical.
Yeah.
I think it's when your values are deeply rooted in authenticity. And no matter what, that's what you stand for. And people know what you stand for. People know that. You set your stall out, and the stall has to be value driven. It can't be just outcome driven. It has to be value driven, in my book.
Yeah.
Don't know whether I've got it right or wrong, but that's my book.
It's similar for the way I see the world, and the words you use there are powerful and they have real infectious passion behind them.
Okay.
So Vanita Uppal, thank you so much for your time here today on the Independent School Podcast.
It's been fantastic. Really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much, Juliet. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Independent School Podcast. If you found today's conversation valuable, I invite you to join my email list and hear more of my fresh thinking on leading strategically through complexity and uncertainty. Visit www.consultjuliet.co.uk/sign up. Remember, the biggest challenges you face are rarely solved by working harder. They're solved by thinking differently, with the right trusted advisor in your corner. While I work with leaders across many sectors, my heart and more than 2 decades of experience remain deeply rooted in education. If you're ready to turn complexity into progress, sharpen your focus, and lead a happier, higher performing team, I'd love to start a conversation about how we could work together. Just reach out anytime. And don't forget, the clearest insights often appear when you gift yourself a moment to slow down and let your best thinking surface.